Good morning, Year 5. It's Wednesday, 10th of February, and hope you're all well. We're going to start today's lesson by just doing a quick recap on our conjunctions. Now, we use conjunctions to connect two clauses together in a sentence, or phrases, or nouns, or verbs. Okay, so here is an example that I have written. So my first sentence: it snowed heavily last night. I couldn't get to school. So I've got two sentences there. Now, to join them together to make one sentence, I'm going to use my conjunction, and I've selected from our conjunctions mat here, or grid, why I couldn't get to school. So I look along the top at the headings. We've got when, why, opinion, but, and. Okay, so I wanted to explain why I couldn't get to school. So it snowed heavily last night. For this reason, I couldn't get to school. Okay, so what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to think of 5 examples of sentences using your conjunctions. Okay, so see if you can create a sentence using when, a why, an opinion, using but, and also using and. Okay, so you want an example from each one of those, and they're going to be really useful to include into your diary entry this week for our writing. So pause the video, have a go, and I'll see you in a moment. Okay, welcome back, guys. Moving on with our lesson. So today we are going to focus on planning our diary entry, and again we want to think about the time, the chronology of our events. Okay, what happened and when did it happen? So we're going to be watching a bit of a clip at the moment. I want you to spend a moment just to go back through your information from yesterday, so you're familiar with the events that occurred, the people that you met. Okay, and we'll watch this clip. Okay, so we're focusing on time order again. Okay, let's have a look.
Little Mary Ann was really quite fantastic. She wasn't like her friends, 'cause she was made of elastic. She'd roll herself up.
I'm Michael Rosen, and I'm an author. To be able to write fiction, there are a few tricks which help to make your writing more exciting for the reader and easy to follow. One type of writing is recount. When you write a recount, you reconstruct a past experience and tell the reader what happened. It's always written in the past tense, as if you're remembering what took place. Recounts are written from one viewpoint, usually the author. So this means that anybody can write a recount, because you have the freedom to write about your own personal thoughts. A recount can retell a real-life experience of something that actually happened. For example, telling a story about the last time you went on holiday. Or we can put ourselves into somebody else's shoes and imagine what might have happened. For example, a day in the life of a pop star. One of the easiest ways to start thinking about a recount story is to draw a diagram to help you to plan your writing. For example, draw a map and imagine a place you could have visited. Or write a timeline of events in an imaginary day. Your recount story should be written in chronological order, which means sequencing the events in the order they happened. Recounts also need to be structured so that they include a beginning, a middle, and and an end. During your recount story, you must use emotive words to set the scene. If you wrote, "I went to the park and it rained," that's telling the reader what you did. But by using more emotive language, it makes a more exciting read and helps your reader visualize the story. For example, "I woke early when the sun had just risen, and as I walked to the park, the rain started to drizzle like a summery waterfall." During your recount story, try to focus on a few key events to give your writing structure. Try to think of 3 things that happened that you'd like to describe. To link your recount together, try to use time connectives like firstly, secondly, finally, afterwards, and meanwhile, eventually, minutes later, before I knew it, without warning, as quick as a flash. Here's my example. "Finally, when the rain eventually stopped, I was able to enjoy the park and find my next adventure." Always try to end with a closing statement. Reflect on what happened and what might happen next. When you've written down your first draft, read it through and see if you like it. Are there parts that you would change? Or could you think of a better name for someone? I like to read my writing out loud so that I can hear what my readers might hear. I wrote some letters to many different people, friends, relations, work people. Some of them answered me. That was good. What they said was interesting. Some of the letters got no answer. When you write your second draft, keep the sections that you like and then add in new sentences that you like more. As an author, I'm constantly editing my writing so that it's the best I can make it.
Okay, excellent. Some really wise words there from the wonderful Michael Rosin. So you can watch that video back again if you like and jot down a few notes. But one of the key things that he picked up on was using emotive vocabulary. So you really want to grab the interest of your reader. Okay, so think about emotions. I think we talked about that yesterday. So what you've got to decide today is how you're going to go about your plan. Okay, so Michael gave us 2 examples there. So you could, let's see if we can get, you could create a timeline like we did for our newspaper last week. You could map it out, so you could actually draw the map, the route map of your journey from Woking towards London. So we looked at our maps yesterday, so it's up to you. For me, I'd do a combination of both of them. Okay, so I'm going to show you a timeline. Here's our map. So you could just draw where the action starts. You can create your own map, okay? But I like to be really nice and clear. So I'm going to start with my 24 hours on a timeline, okay? Now these are the main events that happened from yesterday's reading. So I've just kind of bullet pointed these ideas. So early rise, a walk to the common, spoke to soldiers, headed back to town and home. At 3 p.m. I heard artillery fire, so I'm using the time. Okay, next event at 6 p.m. watching from the summer house, a nearby house was destroyed. So packed my bags and headed for the Spotted Dog pub in Leatherhead. And time's moving on. At 9 p.m. I arrived at my cousin's pub. Okay, now there's a big gap from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. There's 3 hours there, so you might want to add in detail about your journey. Okay, so moving along our timeline, at 11 p.m. I went to make the journey back with the horse and cart. Do you remember I left my wife at the pub for safety, and I had to return the cart. Okay, so on my return journey, there's a storm, the horse dies, okay, and I see a tripod. I'm not too sure about the time here, the exact time. So I got to the house, I drank whiskey, the town was on fire, and I met the soldier. And finally, I had a meal and talked to the soldier. I saw 3 tripods, and this is where I was exhausted. It's the early hours of the morning, okay, so still night time, and this is when I wrote in my diary. So I've got about 8, maybe 9 events to sequence and write about in detail. Okay, good. So you can magpie from that. You could do something completely different. It's up to you, but your plan needs to make sense to you. Right. So it needs to be clear. Okay, you need to map out the next 24 hours in the life of your narrator. Include other details that will engage your reader. You really want to create suspense. So again, use emotive language. Think about using those short sentences. That's how we create suspense. Okay, dropping clues and things like that. So we know we need to write about the soldiers, the artillerymen. We're going to encounter a tripod. This is where I would use my descriptive vocabulary. So put in a good description of the tripod. Okay. And finally, at the end of the kind of 24 hours, this is when I sit down, I share my whiskey, and I write my diary using the past tense. Okay, so today you've got to plan a diary entry. You should sequence the events on a timeline. You could use different conjunctions. So I've put the conjunctions word mat in our resources. So you use a selection of those. And also you might include your own ideas to develop your diary entry. So what can you add to it to make it individual? Okay, good luck with your plan today, guys, and I will see you tomorrow. So I'm just going to say cheerio.